Hello, coffee chat friend. Just wanted to talk a little bit about Constitution. Here I am out for a run on Queensway near Terrace. But I just heard a raven cry there. Just through the bush there is the Skeena River. Beautiful day, same as yesterday, -3. And I'm breathing a little heavy just because I'm about 2 miles into this run. A little exercise. Anyways, I want to talk about Constitution. Sometimes when I run, I get the greatest ideas, things I want to talk about. And I end up talking to myself about them, and then I realize, it would have been nice to share those thoughts with somebody else. So anyway, it's a little jerky here. Let's turn off the video and listen, maybe, if you want to, that is. So this all comes down to, once again, improving the quality of our lives, and through a methodology of greater sense of self-knowledge, right? Because if we know ourselves, we know what runs us a little bit more, the equipment that runs us and so on, we have greater sort of control over our lives, right? So anyway, I was thinking of Constitution relative to what we had talked about a few days ago, the chessboard, right? The game of chess. Now, think of a game of chess. What is its constitution? Well, when you get a brand new chess game, what'll come with it is the board, a bunch of physical stuff, like, the chess pieces basically, pawns, rook, the king and queen, the horse, and so on, right? Bishop. And then you come with this piece of paper in there, and it'll be called something like the rules of the game. It'll be in multiple languages, so everybody understands it. It'll have various pictures, all that sort of thing. Constitution, in other words, is what is it that constitutes? What is it that makes up that game? What is it that makes up that game? Well, if you read through it, there's no reference of you. There's no reference of your name. There's no reference of human beings or man or anything like that. There's reference to person. There's reference to the player, one player, the other player. There's reference to all of the different icons and positions on the board. It's an explanation of how the board works, how it's set up. There's all of this. And then there's, within all of that, there are the rules. How it's played, right? Well, if we think about every constructed entity, whether we buy a new car, whether we buy a new camcorder, whether we form a new corporation, whether we want to build a house, there is, when it's all said and done, a constitution, an inherent constitution, which is, what is it that makes that up, right? So this is kind of confusing, I think, for many people, because sometimes they think that constitutions, cultural constitutions, constitutions of countries, constitutions of religions, constitutions of God, whatever it is, they think that that's more real, more legitimate, maybe, more legitimate than the simple idea of a constitution for a chess game or any other game. The reason I think this is because it's been more bred into us. There's been more of an emphasis on this being real from the time we were born, all the way through school. Can you imagine if, from the time you were born, you were told that a chess game is real, and then in everybody's neighborhood, those big square blocks cut out as chess pieces, you had entities that were called the king and the queen, the jack, all that sort of thing, and they were all the pawns. And everybody had to act within a certain set of rules called the game of chess in life. Well, most people would end up believing it, because that would be their basis of their societal values, right? There's no difference here. No difference whatsoever, except, no difference in concept, except that it's much larger. I'm going to walk for it, so I'm going to stop for a minute here and set this up for another video. The reason it's the concept is exactly the same, but it's more real to people in their imagination and in their experienced world too. It's because everybody's been indoctrinated into it. In the same way as if everybody was indoctrinated into the game called chess being real as a life societal construct. If we were told that, then it would seem real. I was talking with a friend of mine recently about how when everybody supports a belief system, it becomes much more real, or can become much more real. And probably especially when we're indoctrinated from a very young, very young age, right? If you look at a constitution of a country, once again, what is a country as compared to a chess game? It's something constructed by man, right? By human beings, men and women. We just constructed it. We've said, just like taking a piece of cardboard and drawing out a square, putting a bunch of squares on it, humanity has said, okay, here's a piece of land, we're going to put lines on it, we're going to further subdivide it into smaller lines, smaller territories, we're going to give each one a name, and then for each one of those areas, we're going to have more pieces in the chess game, for sure. But you're going to have things like citizens and governors and attorneys and doctors and students and drivers and employees and judges and police officers, like knights, basically. We're going to have priests and bishops and all of these constructs. Bear in mind, these are not human beings. They're no more human beings than the chess pieces are human beings. Because if you look at your constitution, and surprisingly, maybe not surprisingly, but I live in an area that most people call Canada. And when I ask people, have you actually read the Constitution of Canada? There are many people who will look at me kind of strange. I didn't know there was a constitution. Isn't that an American thing? Well, no. Every constructed thing that humanity has come up with, by its very nature, has to have a constitution. Everything has a constitution. This tree has a constitution. And when I say constitution, I mean what it is that are its constituent parts. The constitution of this tree would be, the evergreen sprigs on it, its root system, its ability to do photosynthesis, its bark, its sap, all those sorts of things. That's what makes it up. So you look at what makes up your country, it's all of that. It's all of what people have come up with. And it exists. Where does it exist? Just like the Constitution, how we find out about the Constitution of the chess game is we have to pull a piece of paper out of the box and read it. That's the only way we can know about the constitution of an equally abstract concept called a country. We have to pick out a piece of paper from somewhere and read it. And you'll notice in there, just like any other constructed by, unlike this is not a construct of man, right? We understand this tree is not a construct of man, so its constitution can actually be verified. It could take this little piece of bark into a lab and it could be analyzed, and I could be told that actually comes from this particular tree, which I think is some kind of a cedar. No, is it? I guess it's not a cedar. It's maybe some kind of a hemlock, I think. I wish I was good on trees. Anybody who's a tree person, have a look at that. It's got those little wee evergreen things on it. Anyway, this is real. This is a real constitution that we can verify. A constitution of something that we've fabricated has to exist in our minds, basically, and the way we transpose it into something that's more real is we take a piece of paper and write it down. But it doesn't reference anything except for what we've constructed. It doesn't reference human beings. It doesn't reference man. And if you think I'm crazy, go read your constitution. Or if it does, it only references it as being above the constitution. Because after all, if man and women were the ones who wrote the constitution, they can't really be part of that thing they fabricated. They're the creator of what they fabricated, right? So, but what a lot of people get caught up in is with their country is, first of all, they believe that it's real, any more real, that is to say, than a chess game. And secondly, that it's the basis of their rights and their freedoms and so on has to do with that constitution. In fact, a lot of people will call it our Constitution or the Constitution. But even from that perspective, it doesn't really exist because the Constitution changes. I say the with quotation marks because if it's the Constitution, then it has to be fixed in stone, right? It has to be fixed like the constitution of these rocks. And we can't really change it except if we break it up, but we don't change the elementary construct of the rock. We just break it into smaller pieces. Now, I'm trying to find a place where I can cross this bunch of snow here. Go down a few feet there. What was I going to say? Oh, sinking in snow here. I'll go this way. There's rocks and snow here. Rocks are sticking through it. I'm trying to get around this tree here. Another constitutional tree. Anywho, so if people call it the Constitution, then it can't change, right? Otherwise, it's not the Constitution anymore, it's a different Constitution. But people nevertheless refer to it as the something amendment of the Constitution. Well, it was the Constitution, you couldn't amend it, first of all. But it goes to prove that if you can amend the constitution of something, it's purely fabricated, right? It's not real. It's not where you get your life from. It's not where you get your air from. It's not where you get yourself from. It's only a larger game than the chessboard, if you will, where you and I, or whoever, has voluntarily partaken in the game. It's like the only time that the chessboard has anything to do with you, the chess game has anything to do with you, if you have volunteered to become player A or player B, to take that position as that person, right? So you then animate that person by your hands and do it. In the Constitution, it only talks about things like citizens and governors and presidents and what have you. These are just icons, the same, or they're just words, the same thing as you'd read on your chessboard instructions. When it says king, it doesn't mean a human being. It doesn't even mean the piece that's on there. Because to make that king be real that they're talking about, somebody has to enter the operating position of player and start moving those pieces. It's the same way any constitution of any construct that we make. We are the creators of it, and then we have to enter it to operate it. It doesn't operate itself. Even a computer, as brilliant as it is, to build a computer, there must be a constitution to that whole computer. There must be the keys or the circuit boards, and all these are constitutions. These are what constitutes it, right? But at the end of it all, because we've created it, we have to give it input. We have to give input to every game that we construct, including the games called country. That's all the country is a game, if you want to think about it. It's a grander sense of game because it's become a game of almost like religion, where people actually believe that it's true. People actually believe that they are the citizen. This is how deluded people get. They believe that their rights come from the Constitution. And in fact, if they are the citizen, then that's where their rights come from. But they don't realize that they're the ones who have given life to the citizen. And they're just agreeing to the rights and privileges of the citizen by entering the citizen. By playing that role. Just like playing the role of player A or player B in the chessboard, when we enter the Constitution, the constitutional game called a country, we're entering it to play a part. But it's not what we are. A constitution, we don't get anything from our constitution. What we have, rather than rights, I would say, in our real constitution, is our ability to choose, to prefer one state over another. A state of mind, that is, a state of being. And if that state happens to be getting along with the masses and not rocking the boat and just believing somehow that we are the pawns or the citizens or the governors or the lawyers or whatever of that game called that country, then if we believe that, then we're going to believe obviously that's where our rights come from. But when we get to know what we are, that we are the player, of that, we're the one who's animated the player, then we've done that as a preference over something else, as a preference of joining the crowd and not being lonely in our state of delusion, rather than moving out, seeking other people who will think along the lines that we do, or willing to go it alone, because truth is worth it. In that case, we realize that what we have is we have preferences rather than rights. We have no rights outside of that construct that we've made. We've deluded ourselves to think that we have rights over somebody else. It's exactly the same as the king in chess saying to the pawn, I have a right over you. I can go back up. I can back up and you can't. Why is that? Because it's written in the damn Constitution. That's all. Somebody made it up. It's the same with rights that we supposedly have. Somebody just written them down in a Constitution or some article of declaration or whatever it is. We've bought it. We think it's true. It's only true in the game, folks. It's only true in the game. It's my opinion anyways. I think this is valuable along the lines of improving the quality of our lives, because every time we get a little bit closer to who we are, that we're the creators of many of our, as far as things that are controllable, as far as things that we can create anyways, we are the ones who decide, who prefer one way or the other, to go this way, to go that way, to join this group, to join that group. And yes, in the game called Country, it's much more broad. It's the whole society, almost everybody is deluded like this. And there's people actually who pack guns around and tell other people how to behave because they are so deluded. So it's much more serious in the minds of many. But we can come to realize that, this is actually a game that is much greater, because most people didn't consciously decide to join. They've just been completely mind warped into it. And they'll go around with guns, willing to shoot others, make up all kinds of fictional laws that they think people have to behave. And if they don't, they'll actually throw them in cages. This is how serious it is. So it's not as though we have to say, okay, I'm done. I'm not doing any of your stuff anymore, because that's very dangerous when you're in a crowd of extremely deluded masses. It's much more real than playing a game of chess. I agree. However, we can still abide by it for our safety. It's like a self-defense mechanism. But we no longer have to realize that it's any more legit than the game of chess. It's just a fabrication. It's a bunch of people, one individual or a whole bunch of people came up with, and just billions of people believe that it to be true. It's no different than a religion, and with fictional gods. It's really no different than that. It's no different than believing if somehow we were just in this giant chess game, and each and every one of us had this caste system. Some of us lived in the castle. Some of us lived in the bosom of the king or the queen. Other ones worked as pawns or whatever. And we believed that to be true. Then it would be our reality. And we could all point to that big instruction book that came out of the box and say, that's our Constitution. I have the right to move forward one piece because it says in that Constitution. Yeah, but it's just a game. It's just a game. Anyways, it was great chatting again. Another peek here. There's the Skeena River, flowing a little rapidly, but -3. I had finished my run, and standing here in a bit of a breeze, I'm starting to feel a little bit of the chill come on because I got sweat run down my back. So my house just down the road here, so I better get going, get warmed up. So great chatting to you once again, and we'll have to do this again tomorrow. Bye-bye for now.